Hello, everybody, and welcome to another edition of Madden Benz Unfiltered. Tim Benz and Mark Madden with you, brought to you by Rush to Crush. Make sure you get online, rushtocrushcancer.org, and sign up for the Rush to Crush Cancer bike ride, which is coming up in May. They're taking signups right now, and you can be a part of it. Enjoy the ride with Rush to Crush. We're with you for the next half hour, talking about all things sports-related in Pittsburgh and well beyond. Mark, I know this. At the Trib today, I saw this right before we came on for our live stream today. There's a story that we've got posted about the solar eclipse in April. I wish it happened last night so I could have blinded myself and not have to watch the Penguins against Edmonton last night.
Tim, I wish a solar eclipse would come and never leave. I've had it. I want out. But do go on.
No, my point is just watching that display last night, it just snowballed. It started off bad and then just got worse the minute they allowed the first goal.
Well, that's what happens when you try to dance with Muhammad Ali. The Penguins are still force-feeding this style where they think they can skate with anybody. And look at Edmonton's first 2 goals last night. Bad pinches. The Penguins couldn't catch up going the other way. 1-0, then 2-0. The Penguin style doesn't fit their personnel. And that's why I'm starting to lean more and more that Mike Sullivan's at his expiration date in Pittsburgh. I think he's done a great job heretofore, but he isn't anymore.
Do you believe what Kyle Dubas has advanced about how much he's leaned behind him? Is that just for show, or is that really how he feels? Or is that just a reflection of him wanting to carry the company line about how FSG feels?
I believe Mike Sullivan will coach the Penguins next year. I'm not 1,000% sure of that. You know, maybe he can spot up. Maybe he wants to go to another team because this one ain't going nowhere for a while. But, I mean, who died and made him toe Blake? You know, he came to the Penguins and won twice right away. What's he done since then? He's very close to being Hockey Tomlin.
Oh, 100%. I think the similarities are obvious. We've talked about that on numerous occasions here, and it becomes more and more true with every passing year when neither of them does anything in the postseason. And now in the case of the Penguins, not even getting to the postseason. And the thing that really does bother me about the similarities is Sullivan is creeping more and more into that Tomlin world of, instead of explaining away why problems are amiss with his team, he puts it on the media for asking the questions in the first place.
Right. He has the approach, if I say it, it's true. He talks about context. They're out of the playoffs the second straight year. They just got killed by Edmonton, embarrassed. They just blew a 2-goal lead in the last 10 minutes of Calgary. I don't need any more context than that, coach. You're not Herb Brooks. You're not Scotty Bowman. You're not Badger Bob. You're a pretty good coach, and you've dug the hole deeper here.
Crosby said after the loss in Edmonton last night that he thought the team had a hard time getting beyond the Calgary defeat the night before. Well, that's just too bad. Sure. But get over it. You know, I mean, you have to get over it.
That's easier said than done. Calgary was the final nail in their coffin, and it got real bad last night, and it's going to get even worse moving forward.
Well, then if that's the case, I don't want to hear anything, either publicly or, you know, subterfuge through the media, sort of leaked through the media about the team being upset if Kyle Dubas sells off the deadline, because this team has given him every single opportunity now to operate guilt-free about selling anything he can, and that's what he should do.
Yeah, but the problem is, who do other teams want? I'm worried that they might trade guys who are still useful to facilitate change. I wouldn't criticize that, but I think Marcus Pettersson's a good bet to go because he'd bring good return. And I think they do need change. I'd rather see Raquel go. I'd rather see Graves go. I'd rather see Riley Smith go. But who the frig wants him?
Yeah, and then there's the goalie situation too with Jarry. But you said something on the podcast, Mark, that you don't think you're going to see many goalies move at all this year, huh?
I don't sense that any of the teams who consider themselves legit contenders but don't have a true number one goalie are going to make a move because they see what Vegas did last year with Aiden Hill. They just think, you know, and Darcy Kemper won in Colorado too. They just think you need a goalie.
A good team, and then, you know, just don't allow more than 3 a game, basically.
I guess. I mean, I think they're wrong. I think if Edmonton had Jarry, I hear Edmonton wants Gunsel. They could use Jarry a lot more.
I tend to agree with that. I liked what you said about the Florida connection for Gensel. That seems to make a real logical fit, although I'm sure Dubas would prefer to move Gensel out west. Most of the teams that have been hotly rumored for Gensel have been out west. I don't know if that's sort of 1+1 = 2, because the presumption is Dubas is going to want to move him out of the conference and not have to face him all the time or face him
Well,
potentially.
he shouldn't worry about that because, A, Jake's a rental. If he trades him within the conference, he might, sign with the West next year. If he trades him to the West, he might sign in the East for next year. We can't assume he's going to sign a long-term deal wherever he goes, wherever he gets traded to, rather. I think Florida might be a good bet in that regard, but there's no guarantee. Second, I hear that there's a chance they may keep Gensel, that he's come down off his price.
Mm-hmm.
But the Penguins would be dumb to do that. So would Gensel be dumb to stay. Okay, Dubas said they need to get younger. Explain to me, Tim, how giving a 29-year-old a 6-year contract or longer facilitates getting younger.
It doesn't. The one thing, Mark, that I've thought about, because I tend to agree with all that. You made a similar point in the podcast. I'm with you on it. But the big picture that really concerns me, and this dovetails back to the Sullivan conversation, is, if they're going to get younger, then they have to play the younger guys and they have to stick with the younger guys.
He won't do that.
That's my point, is that
look at Valtteri Puustinen. A couple games ago, he made one mistake, got benched for the rest of the game. Jeff Carter goes out there and soils the bed every single shift. Ain't never going to sit. But his kids were there, so he played more.
What'd you think about Letang against Calgary?
Awful. I mean, that doesn't mean he's still not a real good player, but he's had a bit of a rough patch here the last, 3 weeks, and Calgary was the nadir of that. He was just terrible.
Dubas unto himself. I know he's got a mess to clean up based on the no movement clauses, the limited trade contracts, all that stuff, the contracts that have been handed down to him, the decisions that have been made by FSG. What about his own moves, though, getting the guys that he got? Do you feel like he made real mistakes there with a lot of these players, or what?
Well, you see, every GM makes mistakes. Okay, I'll give you an example. People are going crazy because, they let Jared McCann go in the expansion draft, right?
Mm-hmm.
And he's having a big 3 years in Seattle. Well, I'd rather have Jared McCann. But if you think this team's a playoff team, if it has Jared McCann, you're insane. GMs make bad moves like that all the time. They don't affect the team. Not one move does it. Well, an extreme one can, but that's not an extreme one. It's about this team organically falling apart because they chose to keep the core together, and that was always going to happen if you chose to keep the core together.
There's no chance they shock all of us and figure out a way to trade one of those other two guys, is there?
No.
What about Carlson?
No, who would take him on that cap hit?
I don't know. I'm trying to think of a team that's in desperate need of a two-way defenseman, or I can't even call him a two-way defenseman, a one-way defenseman.
You know what's funny about some of the guys the Penguins have? When Chris Letang played bad the other night,
mm-hmm.
I know that he knows he played bad and said so afterwards, right? I don't think Erik Karlsson ever thinks he plays bad. I don't. I don't think Riley Smith and Jeff Carter ever think they play bad. I don't know that Rickard Rakell ever thinks he plays bad. You know how I know? They play the same way all the time.
I think with Rakell, he did realize, especially early in the season, that he wasn't finishing chances. I think he's a little bit more self-aware than that. It's just, what's he going to do about it? And they can't bench him.
A 6-year deal for $30 million was utter insanity.
Well, that's the part I didn't understand. Like, if they're
playing out now, but I can't blame Rakell for that. I'd take it.
Oh, for sure. But that was my biggest gripe about how they handled things in the last couple of years. If they decided to sink or swim with the core and they weren't going to separate it because they didn't want to be separated and they thought the fans wanted to see the nostalgia act, okay, so be it. That's a business decision. But part of that business didn't have to be further hamstringing yourself with other guys who, quite honestly, are fringe players in the big
Tim,
picture.
I think Ron Hextall was a weirdo, to use the technical term. I think he had real people issues. I think he really hates talking to people. So whenever you retain guys and don't go after free agents, it's the easiest thing to do. It's the least people to talk to. By overpaying guys like Rakell, he just got his work done quickly and had more time to not talk to anybody.
Well, you talk about not moving. If all the Steelers are so unhappy with the conditions of the South Side, how come none of them ever want to leave?
It's a good question. I think that whole NFLPA survey was a tempest in a teapot. And I bet the Steelers, even though Art Rooney got graded F, in his facilities and the way the families are treated got graded F. I bet he's grateful for it because it deflected attention away from the real issues with the team, which is quarterback.
Well, what's he got to do? Like, for instance, if the Chiefs owner was graded, he was the only owner that was graded behind him, and they've won the last 2 Super Bowls. So what's he got to do? Build a sauna that didn't come? I heard it was about a sauna that didn't come as opposed to like a whirlpool that didn't come, or fixing the fields
you really
or whatever.
Think Art Rooney II gives a crap about that survey? You really think that?
I do think he's image conscious, and this hurts his image.
No, I don't think he cares at all about that. It'll blow over in another couple of days, and it'll never get discussed again until the survey next year.
Well, part of it, I guess part of the reason why that might be the case is that the players are so upset and they keep signing contracts whenever they're offered to them. How bad can it be? Like, the message I'm getting from that is you might think it stinks, but it must not stink all that much worse than the 31 other teams that are out there.
Not having somebody to babysit your brats during the game Sunday, you might talk about that in a survey. You might vote an F in the survey. They don't, it's not a big issue. Hire a nanny, for God's sakes. You got the money.
No, it's only an issue, I guess, if they have to go out and get free agents, which, frankly, they don't try to get anyway because they're keeping their own so long as Coach T is here. And, like, that was the funniest part about the surveys. There's a line at the end of the survey, the press release that came out from the NFLPA with it that said this has nothing to do with winning or losing football games, which to me is kind of all you have to know, right? I mean, if this is not about winning or losing football games, then what are we supposed to get all upset about?
Well, I'm waiting to see what happens with Deontay Johnson. The thing that I talked about this a month ago, Tim, that they might part company with him because they're just tired of him.
Yeah, you and I both heard the same thing from different people.
Yeah, I think they should. Okay, I think he's way overpaid for a clear-cut number 2 receiver. And his contract's heading into its last year, so he might try a hold-in again. They can't keep having these hold-ins where the player always wins. The next thing you know, the backup guard's going to do a hold-in.
Here's the thing with Johnson. I wouldn't trade Johnson, but at the same time, Mark, I wouldn't extend him either, because if you trade him, you're just creating a hole where you've already got one. You're making it bigger.
Let me tell you something else, though. If you have him play out the last year of his contract, he will create an excrement storm every chance he gets because he'll be so incredibly unhappy.
He will be, but that's just about every wide receiver, isn't it? I mean,
but he thinks he's a lot better than he is. And Pickens going to go nuts this year too. This year is going to be what was the title of the second episode of Succession? The Steelers this year will be a bleep show at the F Factory. That's what it'll be. I called the Penguins game at Calgary that as well. The bleep show at the F Factory.
What was it, Team Circus or something? What was the phrase that Kevin Colbert got offended about when we talked about them in 2017, 2018 in this context?
Well, he'd get offended by this, I think.
The Circus Steelers or whatever we called him. How about his successor, Omar Khan, and what he had to say at the combine? Did you take anything from that? Like the one thing
I don't think he said anything.
Well, the one thing that I took from him, Mark, was the first time sort of a guy in an executive or a coaching role did the fan thing, which was, you know what? Maybe it'll be different without Matt Canada.
Yeah, I mean, their quarterback, when you got guys like Peter King, just retired, the most sensible, measured football guy ever, talking about how he can't believe what their quarterback situation is. It's not Stephen A. Smith doing the routine. It's not McAfee go, bro, what about the quarterbacks? It's Peter King saying he can't believe it. What's that tell you?
I can't believe it either if they're going to try to reboot it with just Pickett and maybe even worse than Rudolph. There's this sort of presumption it's going to be Pickett and Rudolph. I'm not presuming that. What if somebody decides they want to give Rudolph more than he's expecting to get from the Steelers? That could happen, especially with the way things might shake out in places like Atlanta and Minnesota.
Yeah, I mean, if I were Rudolph, I'd come back because it's his best chance to play because Pickett's going to stink again. But I mean, how can you not trade a second round and a fifth round or a second and fourth even for Justin Fields? How can you not do that? When you traded a first for Minka just to get to 8-8 in a year when you would have been better tanking to draft Justin Herbert.
Here's another one, Mark, that we should talk about with the Steelers before I forget, because I didn't bring it up on the podcast and I wanted to get to it here. Broderick Jones was something else that Omar Khan mentioned, that He was drafted to be a left tackle, but he sure didn't make it sound like it was imminent this year. I guess that's because Dan Moore continues to be Dan Moore enough,
He
whatever
works
that is.
really hard, Tim.
Except that they're talking nonstop to all these tackles at the combine. I mean, if they think that there's a hole there, then admit there's a hole there.
Tim, they are a really poorly coached and poorly run organization and have been for years. And that's something no one wants to say out loud because it's the Steelers, the pride of Pittsburgh, and the whole NFL, the national media. Everybody's such a mark for that logo. They are a poorly coached and poorly run organization and have been for years.
How about Bill Hillgrove announcing his retirement? We talked a bit about.
He wanted to get away from the Steelers. He can't take it no more.
Conneaut Lake is a lot easier just to watch the games from there as opposed to call them. Is that what you're seeing?
Bill and I will be doing a Steelers watch party at Conneaut Lake this coming season. I can guarantee that. The Pelicans Landing.
Now that would be a good time for all up there, I'm sure. But I don't know. I don't know anything more than what I'm presuming. What I'm presuming is based on the way that things have gone the last couple of years, Rob King would probably be the next guy. I think he'll do a fine job with it. He's been the post-game show host. They had him do that interview with Rooney on Steelers.com. So that's kind of my guess as to where it goes from here.
I think Rob King would be great. And there's no younger guy to do it, right? Like Poppy Andy's a possibility, but he's an old bastard.
Tony Carini from West Virginia was another name that had been bandied about a few years ago. I remember that.
Yeah, follow the Jack Fleming trail up from Hoople Land. I think it's going to be Rob King, and I'm good with that.
So he retired. Unfortunately, we had some passings too, Mark. A couple Pirates. Ed Ott, the catcher on the 1979 team, and UL Washington, who played to the end of his career here. Most remembered for playing with a toothpick. You remember him?
No.
Oh, I remember him. He was.
I remember Ed Ott, and one reason we should mourn Ed Ott is because that's the last Pirate team that will ever win a World Series. Not the last one that did. The last one that will ever, in perpetuity, moving forward till the end of time, win a World Series.
Yeah, like when I say the last team that won a World Series, I don't mean since then. I mean forever times. Because
they're never going to be a Pirate team win a World Series again. And I say that not to incite, but because it's true. They have no intent to win, and every year the finances of the game get even further away from what they could do if they tried to win.
Last thing, Mark, and I don't mean to hopscotch, but I want to get this in because I know you talked about it. Rempe, the big 6'8" fighter that the Rangers have called up, he's already become a circus act. It's become a clown show, in my opinion.
Yeah, I'm actually working on a column about that. He's a 6'8" bum. When he stick handles, he looks like he's trying to beat a snake to death with a tree branch. But he plays in New York, so start spreading the news. I hate when people like that are supposedly, in hockey's corner, like King Blogger. All he's done is lionize Rempe. You know what I mean? The game should be past that. People should be criticizing it. And then you got guys, the ex-players who are pumping Rempe's tires too. Most of them, and I know you know the names, Tim, most of them, when they played, would not have fought at gunpoint. Like Biz would fight. I can see Biz giving Rempe his props because they're almost two of a kind, right? Mm-hmm. But I hear some guys talking about how great this Rempe is. I'm going, oh, God, I saw you play, and you were a sissy Mary.
Well, the problem that I've got with it is some of the bloggers and some of the folks are pumping it up on Twitter because if they retweet a Rempe fight, they get traction too with their comments. They're the same people that'll turn right around and, clutch pearls over concussions.
Well, you know what's funny though, too, Tim? The people who like put over stuff like this, the bro podcasts and radio shows and blogs and whatnot, they're fading. I mean, they have their audience and they're probably maintaining it. But like, I'll give you an example, and they're going to hate me for saying this, but F them. Spittin' Chicklets, the hockey thing, right? Mm-hmm. When's the last time somebody really talked about something that was said on there? When's the last time it had a buzz? Pardon my take. When's the last time it had a buzz? Even Pat, doesn't have the same buzz he did. But I can't criticize any of them because they're all making more money than me. At least, well, some of them are.
All right, let's get to some comments here, and we'll start things off with Eric. I know people love blaming Hextall, and although he did a horrible job, how much culpability does he bear for this team's current conditions?
This was always going to happen. Okay, the minute they didn't trade Gino in 2018 or 19 to try to reload younger talent around Sid, it was always going to happen. Don't get me wrong, Hextall hurt the team, but this ain't 100% on him. It ain't on anybody. It just was going to happen, Tim. The Blackhawks went splat. The Red Wings went splat. You go splat. It's how it works in a capped league.
I think that regardless of who the general manager was, they were going to re-sign at least Letang, Malkin to stay with Crosby. And if you have those three guys, then the rest kind of is aftermath. Now,
and Tim, I want to make clear, I'm okay with those three staying together. Okay? I just understand what it's led to, too. I understand the reasoning. They're still selling 98% of the tickets. What I hate is when people go on Twitter and so forth and say, well, I can't even watch this team. Good, then don't watch it. F off. Okay? If after the run they've had, you're going to jump ship the minute there's a bad year, F off. You were never a fan in the first place.
John says, LOL, Hockey Tomlin, when we were talking about Sullivan. I don't know if you're laughing because you like the name or you don't think it's an appropriate comp. I can tell you it's an appropriate comp, and it's becoming more and more appropriate every year.
I could make that stick, Tim, and I just might.
Ron says, Harkins is the worst player in the league. Agree or disagree?
He's close. He's real close. When he got the penalty shot, it was like the final indignity.
Yeah, well, he got the penalty shot. You could tell Edmonton just went, whew, good defensive sequence. Not going to result in a goal. Good job.
Yeah, I mean, but I'm not going to blame their woes on Jansen Harkins.
Right, exactly.
The guy who's killed them more than anybody is Malkin. He has killed them more than anybody. He's terrible on the power play. He's the worst component there. The goal last night was his first in 14 games. He has 2 in 20. I know that. He has killed them. And the problem is he will never not be the second line center. He will never not be on the power play because that's not part of the protocol. But he's killed them.
Ron added, you just knew once Calgary tied it up, they would collapse as usual. And that goes back to the coach context thing. Like, he was trying to massage away an explanation a couple of weeks ago about 1-goal defeats. Well, this is all you need to see, is that there have been plenty of these as well. It's not always about the Penguins rallying back and deserving extra credit.
You know what a 1-goal defeat is, Tim? It's a defeat.
Right, exactly. They don't need another subcategory in hockey. They already have overtime losses. They don't need a fourth one to get half points, Patrick,
I just want to emphasize, though, I'm not mad about any of this. I'm mad at those who are mad. I mean, how can you be mad when a team has the run they did and now it's not that good? That's always going to happen. Tell me in a capped league where it didn't happen, where a team maintained excellence indefinitely. It hasn't happened.
Patrick says, you guys take a beating from the Yinzers, but I enjoy your observations and perceptions turn into reporting. I try to read columns every day, so keep the edge.
I don't take a beating from anybody.
Well, I think he just means people on Twitter who don't like it when we say things that are true but are unpopular.
By the way, Tim, you know who I want to take to task? I'm not going to give them the satisfaction of a plug. But there's this one, a clothesline in Pittsburgh, who they manufacture cheap, cheesy T-shirts. Like they had one about AJ Burnett, sit the F down, that they got everyone to wear, right?
Mm-hmm.
They're cheap and they're cheesy. And they posted a meme making fun of the Penguins losing. Like somebody sitting there depressed, and the caption was, oh no, the Penguins play again. If you're going to cash in on the team, then respect the team. Okay? You don't get to be convenient when it suits your financial gain.
I was just going to say it's probably a moneymaker, and that's why I decided to flip allegiances. Like, I don't care what people do to make money. Just don't be hypocritical about it and be upset when people like us are critical of the team ahead of their convenient schedule. That's the problem that I got.
I don't like leeches and hangers-on, and that's what these people are. They're low-rent pissants.
Richard says, I still don't get how many Pens fans still don't get that all the teams, even the great ones, eventually age out and regress. It's simply the Pens' time. Yeah, I mean, I guess I understand where you're coming from. It's just that then they also get defensive, though, when the topic of Jake Gensel getting traded comes up. I mean, what else are they supposed to do?
You know what I like lately? When I say that it would be good if they trade Jake, You don't get better by getting rid of your best players. Actually, they're worse because they have kept all their best players. That's exactly why they're worse.
Eric says Crosby hasn't looked the same without Gensel. I wouldn't agree with that.
That's just stupid. Just stupid.
Sean says Biz wants Crosby to play with McKinnon. Is this Edmonton's year for the Cup? What could they use at the trade deadline?
Well, I'd like to see Crosby and Biz reunite in Wheeling.
You want to see Crosby play out like in his 50s, sort of like Gordie Howe, but play it out in Wheeling with the Nailers?
No, I'm just using that to kind of make fun of Biz.
No, I know, but that's the only way it can happen.
Yeah, like everybody wants what they consider entertaining. You know what? Oh, Crosby and his buddy Nate. I mean, are they that close? They're middle-aged men. I mean, Sid is, and McKinnon's getting close. Would they paint the town red in Denver? I'm not sure Sid did that when he was 21.
Alex says Gino is washed. Well, I think that much is clear. That's the biggest problem moving forward is that contract.
Well, no, I said before, Tim, let's say, who would you consider to be a solid second-line level center? Not a star, but a solid second-line level center.
On their team?
On any team that they could get.
They can't get anybody. They can't.
No, I'm talking hypothetically.
I don't know. I mean, like Trocheck?
Okay, good example. They're not going to get him, but let's just say they could magically get Trocheck, right?
Mm-hmm.
Trocheck would be the third-line center behind Gino. Gino is the second-line center until death do he parts.
Here's Mark talking about the winning off the field thing with the Steelers. I get where you're going with it insofar as do they make changes and then make it look like they had some sort of accomplishment this offseason? I don't know. I mean, fixing the field to me is no big deal. Fix the field on the south side.
I don't give a frig about them fixing the field. I don't give a frig about their saunas. I don't give a frig about their whiny brats in daycare. Win more games. Win more games. That's the topic. Win more games.
You know, the reason that I know that whole NFLPA thing was a shaming exercise is because in the press release, J.C. Treader said it's not a shaming exercise. That's how I know it's a shaming exercise.
And you know what else, too? If anybody should be the subject of a shaming exercise, it's the NFLPA. The weakest union in pro sports, one of the weakest unions, period. It's the only sport where free agency is never free. As long as your top players can't get to free agency via the miracle of the franchise tag, it keeps them with their teams if the team so dictates, then the salaries never get to where they should be, although they're very high.
Gosh, got a lot of comments here. Joseph says, I agree with you on likely being the end of Sullivan's time, but I don't think they'll figure him this year and maybe not even next year. I hate the notion that people won't watch because they're not good anymore. It's part of being a fan of a team. They go up, they come down, but we still need to follow and support if we're true fans.
And maybe that is happening with the Penguins, Tim. To sell 98% of their tickets this year is pretty impressive.
Casey says, Mark, how bad has Letang been of late? Exposed the puck like a Timbits player on the game-winning goal against Calgary and got walked like a dog by Kadri.
Well, first off, get rid of this guy. This is a guy who collects used jock straps. He literally does, Tim. He's an equipment collector. He collects used jock straps. God knows what he does with them. And he obsesses over how bad Letang is. Letang is the best defenseman in franchise history. He's had a rough patch of a few weeks, but he's been one of their best players on the year. I don't ever want to see that guy's name making comments again. If there's a way to block him from watching this, I think we should do it. Tim, he collects jock straps. That's what he does. Jock straps.
Jock straps, Jackie, for all these people.
That's
right. I'll end on this one. Alex says J.J. Watt can do play-by-play. Can he? I think he can do color. I've never heard him do play-by-play before.
You know, when I go to England in a few weeks, Tim, I'm going to go see Liverpool play 2 home games. But I'm also, between Liverpool games, I'm planning to go to Burnley, which is the team J.J. Watt owns part of.
Oh, really?
You think it'd help me get tickets?
Well, I mean, you've been so flattering in your commentary of the Watt family. Did you want to go in a gym teacher T-shirt or something like that?
Well, they're gonna. You know what? They're gonna get relegated. So as far as seeing them play in the Premier League, get it while it's hot.
All right, that's going to do it for us. We're back next week. Don't forget the Rush to Crush Cancer bike ride. It's more than a ride, it's a mission. Join us May 19th for the Rush to Crush Cancer bike ride. To register, go to rushtocrushcancer.org and help us in the fight against cancer. Join the ride.